Long before empires rose and fell, before the walls of Rome and Athens shaped history, humans looked outward and inward, seeking to understand the mysteries of existence. They wondered, why does the sun rise and set? Why do storms rage across the sea? Why do life and death follow paths we cannot control? It was this curiosity that gave birth to myths and stories designed not merely to entertain, but to explain, teach, and preserve the collective understanding of a people. Greek mythology is not just a collection of fanciful tales about capricious gods and heroic mortals. It is a window into the mind of one of history's most remarkable civilizations. It reflects how the ancient Greeks sought to explain the cosmos, human behavior, and the invisible threads of morality that bound society together. The myths of Greece were both practical and profound. They explained the changing seasons, the perils of the sea, the triumphs of the human spirit, and the consequences of hubris. They informed religious rituals, influenced political structures, and inspired generations of artists, poets, and philosophers. Every myth carries layers of meaning: historical, cultural, ethical, and psychological. Imagine standing on a windswept cliff overlooking the Aegean Sea, where once sailors prayed to Poseidon before embarking on treacherous journeys. Picture the grand temples of Athena and Athens, where citizens gathered to honor the goddess of wisdom and warfare, seeking guidance in civic and personal matters alike. Envision the stories whispered from one generation to the next, around hearth fires and in public gatherings. Tales of gods who quarreled like humans and heroes whose courage defined what it meant to live with honor and consequence. In this journey, we will explore the origins of Greek mythology, tracing its roots from primordial chaos to the structured pantheon of the Olympians. We will meet heroes whose feats have inspired countless generations, encounter monsters that symbolize humanity's deepest fears, and uncover the moral and philosophical lessons that continue to resonate even today. We will see how these stories were not static. They evolved, adapted, and endured, passed down through oral tradition, inscribed on pottery, immortalized in literature, and later reinterpreted by Renaissance artists, writers, and even contemporary creators in film and digital media. By understanding Greek mythology, we are not simply learning about gods and mortals. We are learning about the ways a civilization sought to order the world, impose meaning on chaos, and reflect upon the human condition. We are stepping into the minds of people who lived thousands of years ago, who faced the same questions about life, morality, and the unknown that continue to intrigue us today. In this video, we will journey through time and story, exploring the origins of these myths, the gods who ruled Olympus, the heroes who dared to challenge fate, the monsters that tested courage, and the enduring legacy that continues to shape art, literature, and culture. By the end, we will see that Greek mythology is more than history or legend. It is a living reflection of humanity itself. The origins of Greek mythology. Greek mythology, as we know it, began to take shape during the Bronze Age, roughly between 300 and 1100 BCE, a period of profound cultural development. It was an era marked by the emergence of powerful city-states, the growth of trade across the Aegean and Mediterranean, and the establishment of religious practices that would influence Greek thought for centuries. At its very core, Greek mythology is a cosmogony, a system of stories crafted to explain the origins and order of the universe. In the earliest myths, we encounter chaos, the yawning void from which everything emerged. From chaos came Gaia, the personification of the earth, and Uranus, the embodiment of the sky. These primordial figures were more than abstract concepts. They represented the Greeks' attempt to conceptualize the fundamental elements of existence itself: the earth beneath their feet, the heavens above, and the boundless unknown between. From the union of Gaia and Uranus came the Titans, immense beings who personified vast natural and cosmic forces. Kronos, Rhea, Oceanus, and their siblings were embodiments of time, fertility, and the ocean's forces that shaped human experience long before cities and laws existed. The stories of the Titans are often violent and dramatic, echoing the unpredictable and sometimes destructive power of nature. The overthrow of Uranus by Kronos, and Kronos in turn by Zeus, reflects an enduring theme in Greek thought: the cyclical struggle for order, authority, and balance in both the cosmos and society. By the end of the Bronze Age, myths evolved to center on the Olympian gods, who ruled from Mount Olympus. Unlike the abstract Titans, these gods were anthropomorphic. They displayed human emotions, desires, and flaws. Zeus, the king of gods, was mighty yet jealous. Hera, his wife, was vengeful yet protective. Athena was wise and strategic, guiding mortals in warfare and governance. The Olympians were not distant or untouchable. They intervened in human lives, rewarding virtue, punishing hubris, and teaching lessons through action and consequence. The purpose of these myths was multifaceted. They explained natural phenomena such as earthquakes, storms, and celestial patterns. They offered a framework for understanding human behavior and social hierarchy. They guided rituals and religious ceremonies, helping communities navigate life, death, and the unknown. Myths codified morality and ethics, illustrating the consequences of pride, disobedience, or injustice, while celebrating intelligence, bravery, and piety. It is important to understand that Greek mythology was not a fixed text, but a living tradition. Stories were passed down orally, adapted by bards and storytellers in city squares, temples, and around hearth fires. Different regions had local variations, and myths evolved over centuries, absorbing influences from neighboring cultures, including the Minoans, Mycenaeans, and later interactions with Egyptian and Near Eastern civilizations. Artifacts from the Bronze Age provide insight into this world. Frescoes, pottery, and early temple structures depict figures who would become central to Greek mythology: giants, serpent-like creatures, and gods in abstract forms. These early depictions reveal how the Greeks attempted to visualize the divine, creating symbols that would later crystallize into the rich pantheon of Olympus. Understanding the origins of Greek mythology allows us to see it not merely as fanciful storytelling, but as a sophisticated system for explaining the cosmos, structuring society, and exploring the human condition. Every narrative, from the violent battles of the Titans to the cunning exploits of the first Olympians, reflects the Greeks' ongoing effort to comprehend their world and to find meaning in the forces that shaped both nature and human life. As we move forward in our journey, we will see how these early origins laid the foundation for the heroes, monsters, and gods that have captivated imaginations for millennia, and how these stories became a mirror reflecting human hopes, fears, and aspirations. The Olympian gods and human nature. By the end of the Bronze Age, Greek mythology had begun to evolve into the structured pantheon we now recognize. The Olympian gods, a hierarchy of deities who lived atop the mythical Mount Olympus, observing, influencing, and sometimes intervening in human affairs. Unlike their Titan predecessors, these gods were deeply anthropomorphic, imbued with human emotions, desires, and flaws. Zeus, the king of the gods, exemplifies this humanization. He wielded the thunderbolt, a symbol of absolute power, yet he was not immune to jealousy, infidelity, and impulsive judgment. The myths recount his numerous affairs and the resulting conflicts, both divine and mortal, illustrating that even the most powerful beings were subject to desire, rivalry, and consequence. His authority was absolute, yet precarious, the recurring theme of overthrow from Uranus to Kronos. And Kronos to Zeus reminds us that power in Greek thought was never static, always contingent on strategy, morality, and fate. Hera, Zeus' wife and sister, embodies the duality of protection and vengeance. She is revered as the goddess of marriage, childbirth, and family, yet her jealousy of Zeus' lovers and their children demonstrates a complex moral landscape. In stories such as The Torment of Heracles, Hera's actions reveal both the societal emphasis on marital fidelity and the moral consequences of personal vendetta, creating narratives that resonated with human audiences. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, war, and strategic thinking, represents the ideal of rational intellect paired with moral clarity. Unlike the capricious Zeus, Athena is measured, disciplined, and deeply principled. She guides heroes like Odysseus and Perseus not through brute force, but through insight and strategy, emphasizing that wisdom, cunning, and moral reasoning were equally heroic in Greek culture. Her birth, emerging fully grown and armored from Zeus' forehead, is itself a symbolic reflection of the value the Greeks placed on intellect as divine and powerful. Poseidon, the god of the sea, earthquakes, and horses, reflects humanity's fear and respect for the natural world. Sailors prayed to him before venturing into the treacherous Aegean Sea, seeking protection against storms and shipwrecks. His wrath could manifest as earthquakes or flooding, emphasizing the Greeks' understanding of the sea as a powerful and unpredictable force. Poseidon's temper and interventions serve as reminders of human vulnerability in the face of natural and divine power. The anthropomorphism of the Olympians served a social and psychological purpose. By projecting human traits onto divine figures, the Greeks could explore complex moral and ethical dilemmas in a narrative form. Gods functioned as mirrors of human behavior, allowing people to reflect on virtues such as courage, justice, wisdom, and moderation, as well as vices such as envy, lust, pride, and cruelty. The myths were not rigid prescriptions but dynamic models, illustrating consequences and lessons through narrative and interaction. This humanization also allowed for personal identification with the gods. Individuals could see reflections of themselves, both strengths and weaknesses, in divine characters. Zeus's decisiveness could inspire leadership, Athena's strategic thinking could guide ethical choices, and even Hera's jealousy served as a cautionary example of uncontrolled emotion. These narratives were more than entertainment. They functioned as moral compasses, social education tools, and reflections of human psychology. The myths of the Olympians also reveal a sophisticated understanding of cosmic and societal order. Each god embodied a specific domain: Zeus as sky and law, Poseidon as sea and earthquakes, Demeter as agriculture and fertility, Hades as death and the underworld. By distributing responsibility and power among divine figures, the Greeks mirrored the complexities of human society. Governance, labor, family, law, and war all required balance, negotiation, and respect for boundaries. Religious practice reinforced these relationships between humans and gods. Temples, altars, and shrines were built across the Greek world, from the Acropolis in Athens to the sanctuaries at Olympia. Rituals, sacrifices, and festivals such as the Panathenea for Athena or the Olympic Games in honor of Zeus were not merely symbolic. They represented active participation in a divine order, fostering social cohesion and collective identity. Festivals often combined athletic, artistic, and religious elements, reflecting the Greeks' holistic view of life and morality. The interactions between gods and mortals also served narrative purposes that reflected societal values. Heroes, kings, and ordinary citizens who earned favor or incurred wrath illustrated the delicate balance between piety, courage, and hubris. Consider the story of Niobe, who boasted of her children and was punished by Apollo and Artemis, or the tale of Arachne, whose weaving challenged Athena and resulted in her transformation into a spider. These stories conveyed lessons about humility, respect for divine authority, and the consequences of pride, embedding ethical reflection within entertaining narratives. Moreover, the anthropomorphic gods allowed the Greeks to explore psychological complexity and interpersonal dynamics. Rivalries, alliances, love affairs, and familial tensions among the Olympians mirror human social interactions, enabling audiences to grapple with universal themes such as jealousy, loyalty, ambition, and reconciliation. The gods' personal stories are, in essence, dramatized reflections of the struggles faced by mortals, offering insight into human nature while simultaneously maintaining narrative grandeur. Greek myths also served as vehicles for philosophical inquiry. Early thinkers, such as the pre-Socratic philosophers and later Plato and Aristotle, examined myths allegorically, interpreting the gods as embodiments of human qualities, natural forces, or ethical principles. In Plato's dialogues, for instance, myths are used to illustrate virtues, the soul's journey, and the consequences of moral and intellectual failings. Through this lens, the Olympians are not only mythological figures, they are tools for rational reflection, bridging storytelling and philosophy. The Olympians' human-like qualities also made them relatable across generations and geographies. As Greek colonies spread across the Mediterranean, these myths adapted, absorbing regional influences while maintaining core narratives. The anthropomorphism facilitated this adaptability, ensuring the survival of stories over centuries, from oral traditions to written texts like Hesiod's Theogony and Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. Finally, it is important to note that the Olympians were multifaceted symbols. They represented natural phenomena, social roles, psychological archetypes, and ethical paradigms simultaneously. Zeus was sky and law. Athena was war and wisdom. Aphrodite was love and desire. By embodying multiple layers of meaning, the gods created a rich tapestry of narratives that could educate, entertain, and inspire. In understanding the Olympians, we are not simply learning about divine characters. We are exploring the values, fears, and aspirations of ancient Greek society. We see how humans sought to understand their world, cope with uncertainty, and reflect upon their own nature. The Olympians, with all their power, flaws, and emotions, remain enduring symbols precisely because they are both extraordinary and profoundly human. Heroes and mortal stories. While the Olympian gods reigned from Mount Olympus, influencing the cosmos and human affairs, it was the heroes of Greek mythology who dominated the world of mortals. Heroes were often of divine and mortal parentage, bridging the gap between humanity and the divine. They undertook quests that tested courage, intelligence, morality, and endurance, and through their stories, the Greeks articulated ideals of virtue, strategy, and resilience. One of the most enduring heroes is Heracles, also known by his Roman name, Hercules. The son of Zeus and the mortal Alcmene, Heracles embodies both the greatness and the tragedy of the human condition. His 12 labors were not mere feats of physical strength, they were trials designed to redeem past transgressions, demonstrate perseverance, and highlight the human struggle against both internal and external challenges. From slaying the Nemean lion to capturing the Ceryneian hind, each labor represents an allegorical test of courage, ingenuity, and moral fortitude. Heracles' story resonates because it acknowledges human imperfection. Even a son of Zeus can be flawed, suffer, and seek redemption. Perseus, another quintessential hero, demonstrates the importance of intellect and cunning alongside bravery. Tasked with slaying the Gorgon Medusa, whose gaze could turn men to stone, Perseus relies not only on divine gifts, the reflective shield of Athena, and Hermes' winged sandals, but also on his own ingenuity. This story highlights the Greek belief in strategic thinking and cleverness as heroic qualities, reinforcing the value of intelligence as much as physical prowess. Perseus' narrative also intersects with moral and ethical lessons. He rescues Andromeda from a sea monster, illustrating that heroism often serves others and upholds justice. Theseus, the legendary king of Athens, is another emblematic figure, representing civic duty and rational problem solving. His journey into the labyrinth to confront the Minotaur is a metaphor for confronting chaos and fear with courage, ingenuity, and social responsibility. Theseus' victories are not simply personal achievements, they reflect the ideals of leadership, intelligence, and commitment to the community. Through his story, the Greeks celebrated the hero as both an individual and a model citizen, embodying virtues that sustained social order. Perhaps the most psychologically rich hero is Odysseus, whose decade-long journey home after the Trojan War is immortalized in Homer's Odyssey. Unlike Heracles or Perseus, Odysseus relies less on strength and more on intelligence, patience, and cunning. His encounters with the Cyclops, Circe, and the Sirens illustrate the delicate balance between human ingenuity and ethical decision-making. Odysseus' trials also explore the human struggle with temptation, loyalty, and perseverance, emphasizing that heroism often requires emotional and intellectual resilience rather than brute force. Heroes in Greek mythology were not just role models, they were moral and cultural exemplars. They demonstrated qualities valued by Greek society: courage in battle, respect for the gods, strategic intelligence, and ethical decision-making. At the same time, they were prone to flaws such as hubris, anger, or impulsiveness, reminding audiences that human nature is complex and fraught with moral ambiguity. The stories of heroes are thus both aspirational and cautionary. The narratives of heroes also served as cultural blueprints. Festivals, athletic competitions, and theatrical performances often celebrated their deeds, embedding these stories within the civic and religious life of Greek society. For example, the Olympic Games were held in honor of Zeus, but they also commemorated legendary heroes who embodied the virtues of athleticism, courage, and fair competition. Dramatic plays often adapt heroic myths to explore themes of morality, social justice, and human suffering, reinforcing communal values and ethical reflection. Greek heroes were also symbolically connected to natural and societal forces. Heracles' labors often involve taming wild beasts or confronting chaotic environments, reflecting humanity's struggle to impose order on nature. Perseus' journey blends human and divine assistance, demonstrating the importance of collaboration and wisdom. Theseus's confrontation with the labyrinth mirrors society's negotiation with danger, governance, and the unknown. Heroes' actions frequently have both personal and societal consequences, illustrating that individual courage and wisdom are inseparable from collective well-being. The Greek concept of heroism was also intimately tied to divine favor and intervention. Mortals could only succeed when aided by the gods, emphasizing the belief that human efforts, while important, are embedded within a larger cosmic order. Athena's guidance of Perseus, Hermes' assistance, and Hera's antagonism of Heracles all highlight the interplay between mortal agency and divine influence. This dynamic reinforced moral and religious lessons. Humility, respect for the gods, and ethical conduct were essential for success and survival. Heroes were often defined by the resolution of ethical dilemmas, a feature that modern audiences find deeply compelling. Heracles' labors, for example, involve choices that test his strength, morality, and emotional control. Odysseus' encounters with temptation and the morally ambiguous characters of his journey reflect the Greek fascination with ethical complexity. These narratives explore the consequences of human decisions, illustrating that heroism is as much about moral integrity and strategic thinking as it is about physical prowess. The humanization of heroes made them relatable and enduring. Though they performed extraordinary deeds, they faced universal struggles: fear, loss, temptation, pride, and ethical uncertainty. Their triumphs and failures mirror our own, allowing successive generations to find relevance and inspiration in these tales. In essence, heroes act as cultural intermediaries, translating divine ideals into human experience. Beyond their narrative and moral functions, heroes also played a central role in art, literature, and oral tradition. From the epic poetry of Homer to vase paintings depicting heroic exploits, the deeds of mortals and demigods were immortalized visually and orally. This ensured that heroic myths were accessible to both literate and non-literate audiences, preserving cultural knowledge and social values across generations. Artifacts such as bronze figurines, frescoes, and engraved pottery depict specific episodes, like Heracles wrestling the Nemean lion or Perseus beheading Medusa, highlighting both their aesthetic and didactic importance. Heroes' stories were not static. They evolved across regions and centuries, absorbing local traditions, political ideologies, and moral norms. Different city-states often emphasized particular heroes to reinforce civic identity. Athens, for instance, celebrated Theseus as a symbol of leadership and community, while Thebes emphasized Heracles' strength and resilience. This adaptability ensured that heroic myths remained relevant, reinforcing cultural cohesion while allowing local expression. The enduring appeal of Greek heroes also lies in their psychological depth. They grapple with fear, doubt, morality, and personal desire, reflecting the human condition in ways that transcend time and geography. Modern adaptations from literature to film to video games continue to explore these themes, showing that the narratives of Heracles, Perseus, Theseus, and Odysseus remain not only culturally significant, but psychologically resonant. Ultimately, heroes in Greek mythology function as bridges between the human and the divine, between ordinary life and extraordinary potential. They embody ideals and cautionary lessons simultaneously, offering a mirror to human aspiration, ethical decision-making, and resilience in the face of adversity. Through their stories, the Greeks explored questions that remain relevant today. What does it mean to be courageous? How should one act ethically in the face of power and temptation? How can humans navigate a world influenced by forces beyond their control? By understanding the heroes, we understand not only Greek mythology but the values, fears, and hopes of the civilization that created it. These narratives, rich in complexity and depth, illuminate both human nature and the moral and social ideals that guided one of history's most influential cultures. The lasting legacy of Greek myths. The influence of Greek mythology extends far beyond its ancient origins, enduring across millennia as a living cultural and intellectual legacy. These stories, originally transmitted orally and later written in epic poetry, drama, and philosophical treatises, have shaped art, literature, philosophy, and popular culture, creating a bridge from antiquity to the present day. During the Renaissance, a period marked by the rediscovery of classical knowledge and humanist thought, Greek myths experienced a remarkable revival. Artists such as Sandro Botticelli, Titian, and Michelangelo drew inspiration from Homeric epics and Hesiod's Theogony, translating mythological narratives into visual forms that blended aesthetic beauty with moral and philosophical reflection. Botticelli's The Birth of Venus and Primavera are not mere depictions of mythological events. They symbolize ideals of beauty, humanism, and the cyclical nature of life and love, revealing the capacity of myths to communicate complex cultural and philosophical ideas across time. Painters and sculptors did more than illustrate myths. They reinterpreted them to explore the human condition, the relationship between mortals and the divine, and the ethical dilemmas presented in ancient narratives. The dramatic gestures, intricate compositions, and symbolic details of Renaissance artworks served both an educational and a contemplative purpose, allowing viewers to engage with mythological themes in profound and personal ways. The myths' adaptability during this period demonstrates their timeless appeal and narrative elasticity qualities that have ensured their survival across cultures and epochs. In literature, Greek mythology inspired countless writers and poets. During the Enlightenment and Romantic periods, figures such as John Keats, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and Goethe drew on mythic motifs to explore universal human experiences: love, ambition, suffering, and mortality. The tales of heroes, gods, and monsters became vehicles for moral and philosophical exploration, bridging imaginative storytelling with reflections on human nature and society. Even in prose, mythological references offered allegorical insight. Prometheus' defiance of Zeus symbolizes the human quest for knowledge, creativity, and freedom, while Icarus' fall cautions against overambition and disregard for natural limits. The influence of Greek myths also shaped theater and drama. Ancient Greek tragedies and comedies, written by dramatists such as Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, not only presented mythic narratives but also investigated ethical dilemmas, human suffering, and the consequences of choice. Their works became foundational texts for Western drama, emphasizing that mythology was not only storytelling but a medium for philosophical, moral, and societal inquiry. The structures, character archetypes, and themes of these plays continue to inform modern theater, cinema, and storytelling conventions. In the visual arts, Greek mythology inspired neoclassical painting and sculpture during the 18th and 19th centuries, reflecting societal admiration for antiquity's perceived moral and aesthetic ideals. Sculptors like Antonio Canova immortalized mythological subjects with elegance and realism, emphasizing themes of beauty, virtue, and heroism. The enduring appeal of mythological subjects in art lies in their ability to explore universal human experiences: emotion, desire, struggle, and triumph through symbolic narratives that remain accessible across cultures. In modern literature and media, Greek myths continue to resonate. Contemporary novels such as Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series reinterpret ancient myths for younger audiences, blending classical narratives with modern settings and challenges. Video games such as God of War and Hades adapt mythic narratives into interactive storytelling experiences, allowing players to embody heroes, interact with gods, and confront mythological monsters. These adaptations demonstrate the continuing relevance and versatility of Greek myths, showing that ancient narratives can be reshaped to meet the aesthetic, educational, and emotional needs of contemporary audiences. Social media platforms, particularly TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, have facilitated a renewed fascination with mythology, often presenting stories in visually dynamic or narrative-driven formats. Short videos condense epic tales, highlight heroic exploits, or explore gods' personalities, appealing to modern audiences' desire for concise, engaging storytelling. Memes, animations, and digital art have also popularized lesser-known myths, ensuring that stories that were once confined to ancient texts are now globally accessible. Greek mythology's influence is not confined to storytelling and entertainment. It has shaped language, psychology, and education. Terms such as Achilles' heel, Pandora's box, and Sisyphean task have entered everyday language, reflecting moral and philosophical concepts from antiquity. Psychological theories, particularly Carl Jung's archetypes, draw on mythic structures, interpreting heroes, gods, and monsters as symbols of universal human experiences, fears, and desires. Educational curricula across the world continue to include Greek myths, highlighting their pedagogical value in teaching literature, history, and critical thinking. Moreover, Greek mythology has inspired cultural identity and national consciousness. During the formation of modern European nations, references to Greek civilization, its gods, heroes, and philosophical achievements were invoked to assert cultural heritage, intellectual prestige, and artistic sophistication. The myths became symbols of human potential, bridging antiquity with modern ideals of democracy, civic responsibility, and rational inquiry. The enduring legacy of Greek mythology lies in its ability to evolve. Myths are not fixed texts, but living narratives. They adapt, merge with local traditions, and respond to societal needs while retaining core themes of human experience. This adaptability ensures that Greek mythology continues to inspire artists, writers, educators, and audiences, making the stories perpetually relevant across centuries and cultures. In essence, the legacy of Greek myths is both timeless and transformative. They are at once historical records, artistic inspiration, moral guides, and frameworks for understanding human nature. They teach, provoke reflection, and entertain, connecting us to a civilization that, thousands of years ago, first sought to make sense of the cosmos, the gods, and ourselves. As we continue our journey, we will see that this legacy is not simply a reflection of the past. It is a living inheritance, influencing contemporary thought, digital storytelling, and popular imagination. Greek myths endure not because they are old, but because they speak to the fundamental questions of human existence: who we are, how we relate to one another, and how we understand the world around us. Why we still look to Greek mythology. The power of Greek mythology does not lie merely in fantastical tales of gods, monsters, and heroes. It lies in its enduring exploration of human nature, morality, and the search for meaning. For thousands of years, these stories have captivated audiences because they speak to experiences, emotions, and dilemmas that remain fundamentally human, transcending time, geography, and culture. At its core, Greek mythology functions as a mirror of human behavior. The gods and heroes we meet in these narratives embody traits and dilemmas that continue to resonate today. Zeus' authority, Hera's jealousy, Athena's wisdom, and Odysseus' cunning all reflect aspects of human psychology. Heroes' trials, moral challenges, and ethical decisions illustrate how humans grapple with courage, loyalty, ambition, and consequence. These stories allow us to examine our own choices, fears, and desires in a symbolic, narrative form. One reason myths remain compelling is their universality. The same fears, ambitions, and ethical questions confronted by the Greeks: justice, mortality, love, pride, ambition, and the limits of human power continue to shape our world. Prometheus's defiance of Zeus in giving fire to humanity explores the tension between knowledge and authority, innovation and responsibility. Icarus' flight toward the sun reflects the human struggle with ambition and the danger of hubris. Such tales serve as both cautionary narratives and sources of inspiration, demonstrating that ancient stories can illuminate modern human experience. Greek myths also offer profound insight into cultural ideals and societal values. They codified principles such as courage, loyalty, wisdom, and moderation, while warning against vices like arrogance, greed, and recklessness. Unlike rigid philosophical treatises, myths presented these values dynamically, allowing audiences to observe consequences through narrative rather than abstract argument. By illustrating moral and ethical lessons in the form of engaging stories, the Greeks created a system of social education that was both compelling and enduring. The continued relevance of Greek mythology is also rooted in its symbolic depth. Each myth operates on multiple levels: historical, social, ethical, psychological, and philosophical. Take, for example, the myth of Persephone and Demeter. On one level, it explains the cycle of the seasons, reflecting the agrarian concerns of ancient Greece. On another, it explores themes of life, death, loss, and reconciliation, offering a framework for understanding the cyclical nature of existence and human emotions. This multi-layered symbolism allows myths to resonate with diverse audiences across time, serving simultaneously as folklore, moral guide, and philosophical meditation. Greek mythology also addresses the human encounter with the unknown. Ancient Greeks lived in a world of uncertainty. The sea could swallow ships, storms could destroy crops, and disease could decimate populations. Myths provided explanations for natural phenomena: Zeus' thunderbolts, Poseidon's earthquakes, and Hades' underworld, while framing these events in human and moral terms. By personifying natural and cosmic forces, myths offered a sense of order and understanding, helping individuals and communities navigate an unpredictable world. Moreover, mythology encourages philosophical reflection and ethical inquiry. Ancient philosophers such as Plato and Aristotle interpreted myths as allegories, exploring human behavior, morality, and the nature of the soul. Plato, for instance, viewed myth as a medium for discussing ethical dilemmas and the pursuit of knowledge, arguing that narratives like the myth of Air in the Republic could guide reflection on justice, morality, and the consequences of human actions. In this sense, myths operate not merely as stories, but as tools for intellectual engagement, prompting audiences to examine themselves and the society in which they live. The enduring fascination with Greek mythology also reflects its psychological resonance. Carl Jung's concept of archetypes, for instance, draws on myths to explain recurring patterns of human thought and behavior. Heroes, mentors, tricksters, and shadow figures in Greek myths correspond to universal aspects of the human psyche. Odysseus' journey, Perseus' triumph over Medusa, and Heracles' labors represent the trials, growth, and ethical struggles that define human experience. These stories remain psychologically compelling because they mirror internal struggles, moral dilemmas, and the pursuit of personal and societal balance. Greek mythology continues to influence modern storytelling. Literature, film, television, and video games frequently draw on these ancient narratives, reinterpreting them for contemporary audiences. For example, the Percy Jackson series introduces Greek gods and heroes to young readers, framing ethical dilemmas and personal growth within modern contexts. Video games like God of War allow players to inhabit mythological characters, engaging with the symbolic and moral dimensions of heroism. Even memes and short-form social media content distill mythic lessons into formats accessible to today's fast-paced audience. This adaptability ensures that myths remain relevant, engaging, and educational, connecting past and present. Beyond entertainment, Greek mythology functions as a framework for cultural literacy. Knowledge of myths provides insight into Western art, literature, philosophy, and political thought. Phrases like Achilles' heel, Pandora's box, or the Midas touch encapsulate ethical and psychological lessons, enriching language and thought. Artists, writers, and educators continue to reference myths to explore universal human themes, demonstrating that the stories retain practical, intellectual, and moral utility. Importantly, Greek mythology allows us to confront existential questions. Why do we face suffering? How should we live? What is the role of fate versus free will? Myths present these questions through narrative, offering models for grappling with the challenges of life. The ethical dilemmas faced by heroes and mortals, the consequences of divine interference, and the moral lessons embedded in myths provide a space for reflection and guidance, even thousands of years after their creation. Greek mythology also illuminates cultural continuity and human aspiration. By studying myths, we gain insight into the ancient Greeks' worldview, their values, and their attempts to impose meaning on the natural and social world. Simultaneously, these stories resonate because they address enduring questions: how to balance ambition with humility, power with justice, desire with ethics, and knowledge with responsibility. These are questions every society, every generation must confront. Finally, Greek myths endure because they are living narratives. They evolve with each retelling, absorbing cultural shifts, technological advancements, and new artistic expressions. From oral tradition to epic poetry, from Renaissance painting to modern video games, myths adapt while retaining their core exploration of human nature, morality, and cosmic order. They continue to teach, inspire, and provoke reflection, affirming that ancient stories remain relevant because they speak to what it means to be human. In sum, we continue to look to Greek mythology not because the gods or heroes are real, but because the stories they inhabit provide timeless insight into human psychology, morality, culture, and philosophy. They are mirrors reflecting our fears, ambitions, triumphs, and ethical dilemmas. They are bridges connecting the distant past to the present. They are, ultimately, enduring narratives that remind us of the universality of human experience and the perpetual relevance of reflection, courage, and moral inquiry in our own lives. Greek mythology and nature. One of the most compelling aspects of Greek mythology is the profound way in which it is intertwined with the natural world. For the ancient Greeks, the environment was not simply a backdrop for human life, it was imbued with meaning, agency, and divine presence. Storms, earthquakes, rivers, mountains, and the changing seasons were interpreted as manifestations of divine power, and myths provided both explanation and ethical guidance for interacting with these forces. The gods themselves were intimately associated with natural phenomena. Zeus, king of the Olympians, wielded thunder and lightning, controlling storms and the skies. Sailors and farmers alike revered him for his ability to bring both nourishment through rain and destruction through tempest. Poseidon, god of the sea and earthquakes, was feared for his unpredictable temperament, capable of sinking ships, creating tsunamis, or causing earthquakes that shook the land. Even Hades, god of the underworld, symbolized the inexorable natural cycle of life and death. Through these associations, the Greeks humanized natural forces, making them comprehensible and morally intelligible. Seasonal cycles and agriculture were central to Greek life, and myths often explained these rhythms. The myth of Demeter and Persephone is perhaps the most famous example. Persephone's annual descent into Hades and return to the surface corresponded to the dying and rebirth of crops. This story was not only allegorical but practically significant, guiding agricultural practices, ritual observances, and communal life. Festivals such as the Eleusinian Mysteries honored Demeter and Persephone, linking religious devotion to environmental and societal sustainability. By embedding natural cycles in narrative, the Greeks created a symbolic language that connected human action to the rhythms of the earth. Greek myths also served to explain catastrophic natural events. Earthquakes, floods, and storms were seen as expressions of divine displeasure. Poseidon's wrath could result in a shipwreck or tsunami, while Zeus' anger might manifest as a devastating storm. Such narratives offered moral and practical guidance, emphasizing the need for piety, respect, and ethical behavior. They also provided a framework for communal response. Rituals, sacrifices, and festivals acted as mechanisms for social cohesion and environmental awareness, reinforcing the relationship between humans, gods, and nature. Mountains, rivers, forests, and other landscapes were sacred spaces in Greek mythology. Certain rivers were believed to be inhabited by gods or nymphs, such as the river Alpheus, associated with the river god Alpheus, and forests were often linked to Artemis, goddess of the wilderness. Caves and springs were considered portals to the divine or the underworld, imbued with spiritual significance. By situating mythological narratives in specific locales, the Greeks reinforced cultural and environmental consciousness, ensuring that myths were not abstract tales but interwoven with lived experience and geography. The symbolism of natural elements extended to the behavioral and ethical realm. Lightning, earthquakes, and floods were not random. They represented divine judgment or cosmic balance. Heroes and mortals who ignored these signs or acted with hubris attempting to defy natural or divine order often faced catastrophe. Conversely, respect for sacred spaces, observance of rituals, and attentiveness to environmental cues were rewarded. In this way, myths served as ethical ecological guides, emphasizing stewardship, humility, and harmony with nature. Greek mythology also conveyed philosophical reflections on life and the cosmos through nature. The ocean was not just a barrier or source of food. It was a symbol of unpredictability, mystery, and divine presence. The Aegean Sea, with its tempestuous waters and hidden dangers, was central to Greek identity, influencing trade, exploration, and cultural exchange. Myths about Poseidon and sea monsters reflected both fear and respect, shaping ethical behavior and fostering a worldview in which humans had to negotiate with, rather than dominate, natural forces. The interplay between humans and nature is further illustrated in stories like that of Narcissus and Echo, which, while primarily exploring themes of love and reflection, are set in natural environments, forests, rivers, and mountains that mirror human emotion. Likewise, Phaeton's catastrophic attempt to drive the sun chariot results in environmental devastation, demonstrating the consequences of hubris not only on human society, but on the natural world itself. These narratives reinforce the idea that human actions are inseparable from environmental consequences, a lesson that resonates even in contemporary ecological thought. Greek mythology also emphasizes seasonal transformation, birth, and decay as natural processes deeply connected to human life. The stories of Dionysus, god of wine and vegetation, highlight cycles of growth, fertility, and transformation, illustrating how human culture was intertwined with agricultural rhythms and ecological awareness. Festivals honoring Dionysus, such as the Dionysia, combine theatrical performance, religious ritual, and community gathering, reflecting a holistic understanding of nature, society, and spirituality. The Greeks used myth to communicate a symbolic understanding of geography. Rivers, mountains, islands, and forests were more than physical spaces, they were imbued with narrative significance. Mount Olympus was not just a peak, it was the home of the gods who governed all aspects of life. The river Styx represented boundaries between life and death. Forests were domains of nymphs, satyrs, and Artemis, embodying both natural abundance and danger. Through this geographical storytelling, Greeks learned to navigate their world, imbuing landscapes with meaning and guiding ethical interaction with the environment. Moreover, Greek mythology emphasizes the interconnectedness of human and natural order. The cycles of life, the unpredictability of weather, and the fertility of the land were all understood as part of a larger cosmic balance. Myths reinforced the idea that humans were participants in this order, responsible for ethical engagement with both gods and nature. Respect for environmental rhythms, observance of rituals, and ethical behavior ensured harmony, while hubris and neglect invited catastrophe. Natural phenomena also shaped cultural psychology and identity. Greek sailors, farmers, and city dwellers internalized the lessons of myth in their understanding of risk, morality, and communal responsibility. By personifying storms, earthquakes, and floods, myths helped communities conceptualize forces beyond human control and provided symbolic frameworks for understanding and responding to natural events. These stories fostered resilience, ethical reflection, and a sense of cosmic order that integrated nature into social and moral life. Finally, Greek mythology demonstrates the timeless relevance of nature in human storytelling. Myths about gods, heroes, monsters, and mortals interacting with the natural world offer lessons in ethics, psychology, and environmental awareness. They reveal that the ancient Greeks saw the environment not merely as a resource, but as a living system imbued with meaning, divine presence, and moral significance. By understanding these myths, modern audiences gain insight into the origins of human environmental consciousness, the ethical framing of natural phenomena, and the enduring power of storytelling to shape our relationship with the world around us. In essence, Greek mythology and nature are inseparable. Through myths, the Greeks interpreted, celebrated, and respected the natural world. They created symbolic narratives that connected human behavior, ethical conduct, and environmental awareness. These stories continue to teach, inspire, and resonate because they address universal human concerns: how to live in harmony with the world, understand forces beyond our control, and find meaning in the cycles of life and death. Lesser-known myths. While the Olympian gods and famous heroes often dominate the stories of Greek mythology, a vast universe of lesser-known myths reveals the richness, complexity, and moral depth of Greek storytelling. These tales are often overlooked in popular culture, yet they provide profound insights into human emotion, societal values, ethical reflection, and the Greeks' understanding of the cosmos. One such story is that of Niobe, daughter of Tantalus, who became queen of Thebes. Niobe's tale is a cautionary narrative about hubris, pride, and divine retribution. Proud of her 14 children, she boasted that she surpassed the goddess Leto, who had only two, Apollo and Artemis. In response, Leto sent her children to punish Niobe, resulting in the death of all of Niobe's offspring. Stricken with grief, Niobe fled to Mount Sipylus, where she was transformed into stone, her face eternally weeping. This myth reflects the Greek concern with excessive pride and the consequences of challenging divine authority, illustrating that even those who appear powerful or blessed are subject to moral and cosmic law. Niobe's story resonates because it explores themes of loss, grief, and humility, emotions that remain universally human. The myth of Phaeton similarly illustrates the consequences of overreaching ambition and poor judgment. Phaeton, son of the sun god Helios, sought to prove his divine lineage by driving the sun chariot across the sky. Unable to control the powerful horses, he veered too close to the earth, scorching vast regions and setting forests ablaze. Zeus intervened, striking Phaeton down with a thunderbolt to prevent further destruction. This tale is not merely an adventure story. It is a moral allegory about hubris, responsibility, and the limits of human ability. Phaeton's narrative continues to inspire reflection on ambition, risk, and the consequences of overestimating one's power, a theme that remains relevant in both personal and societal contexts. The story of Echo and Narcissus explores the interplay of love, desire, and self-reflection, offering psychological and ethical lessons that resonate today. Echo, a mountain nymph, fell in love with Narcissus, a beautiful youth who was enamored with his own reflection. Rejected by Narcissus, Echo pined away until only her voice remained, while Narcissus, entranced by his own image, ultimately perished. This myth conveys the dangers of obsession, unreciprocated love, and self-absorption. It illustrates the Greek understanding of human emotion and social consequence, highlighting the interplay between individual desire and relational ethics. Modern psychology and literature often draw upon this myth, emphasizing its enduring relevance in exploring narcissism, attachment, and emotional development. Another lesser-known narrative is that of Arachne, a mortal weaver of extraordinary skill who dared to challenge the goddess Athena. Arachne's tapestry depicted the misdeeds of the gods, and though her craftsmanship was flawless, her hubris offended Athena. In punishment, Arachne was transformed into a spider destined to weave for eternity. This myth reflects multiple layers of Greek thought. It celebrates artistic talent, and ingenuity while cautioning against pride and disrespect toward divine authority. Beyond the moral lesson, it is also a narrative about the relationship between mortals and gods, creativity and restraint, and the cultural importance of skill, craft, and ethical conduct. Lesser-known myths often explore the consequences of human interaction with the divine. Consider the story of Baucis and Philemon, an elderly couple who welcomed disguised gods Zeus and Hermes into their home, showing hospitality and kindness despite their poverty. Rewarded for their piety, they were transformed into intertwined trees, symbolizing eternal unity and virtue. This story emphasizes humility, kindness, and divine reciprocity, illustrating that virtue, rather than wealth or status, is recognized and celebrated. Such narratives highlight the Greek emphasis on moral behavior, social ethics, and the relational aspect of human-divine interaction. The myth of Orpheus and Eurydice illustrates the transformative power of love, loss, and artistic expression. Orpheus, a musician of unparalleled talent, descended into the underworld to rescue his beloved Eurydice. Using his music to charm Hades and Persephone, he was granted the opportunity to lead her back to the living world on the condition that he not look back. Tragically, Orpheus glanced, losing her forever. This story conveys multiple layers of meaning: the limits of human control, the potency of art, the inevitability of mortality, and the psychological dimensions of hope, trust, and grief. Orpheus' journey is emblematic of the human struggle against fate, illustrating that even extraordinary talent cannot overcome universal constraints. Many lesser-known myths also provide symbolic explanations of natural phenomena, ecological cycles, and human experience. For example, the story of Persephone's abduction by Hades not only accounts for seasonal change, but also embodies themes of separation, reunion, and cyclical loss and renewal. Other tales, such as that of Midas, who wished that everything he touched turned to gold, explore the tension between desire and consequence, wealth and wisdom, human greed and ethical restraint. These myths are rich in allegorical meaning, addressing issues of psychology, ethics, and the natural order in ways that continue to resonate across centuries. Greek mythology also encompasses complex familial and social dynamics, often explored through lesser-known narratives. Myths about sibling rivalry, forbidden love, and political intrigue, such as the tragic tale of Oedipus' family or the conflicts among the house of Atrusexamine, the consequences of moral failings, hubris, and divine manipulation. These narratives illustrate the Greeks' nuanced understanding of human behavior, social consequence, and the intergenerational transmission of fate and ethics. Even minor myths reveal patterns of decision-making, conflict resolution, and moral reflection relevant to contemporary society. Importantly, these lesser-known myths highlight the psychological and emotional spectrum of human experience. Tales of grief, jealousy, ambition, love, betrayal, and hubris present characters as complex beings navigating moral, emotional, and existential dilemmas. They reflect universal human concerns, from the consequences of arrogance and selfishness to the value of empathy, loyalty, and ethical action. Such stories function as both entertainment and ethical reflection, demonstrating that mythology is a medium through which societies explore human nature, morality, and cultural norms. The enduring relevance of lesser-known myths is evident in modern adaptations and cultural reinterpretation. Writers, artists, and filmmakers draw upon obscure characters and events to explore contemporary themes. For example, the tale of Arachne has inspired stories about female creativity, defiance, and systemic injustice. The narrative of Baucis and Philemon appears in literature and film as a model of humility and kindness rewarded. Even stories of Phaeton, Midas, or Niobe are reinterpreted in educational contexts, literature, and visual media to teach ethical reflection, personal growth, and critical thinking. Finally, these myths illustrate the breadth and depth of Greek mythology as a cultural system. While the Olympians and celebrated heroes occupy the center stage, the lesser-known narratives fill out a complex, interwoven tapestry of moral, ethical, social, and cosmic lessons. They reveal a society deeply engaged with questions of human behavior, divine justice, environmental understanding, and existential reflection. By studying these narratives, we gain insight not only into ancient Greek culture, but also into timeless aspects of human psychology and societal organization. In essence, lesser-known myths are far from minor. They are essential to understanding the full spectrum of Greek mythology. They teach that heroism is not always grand, divine intervention is not always obvious, and morality is nuanced and consequential. They remind us that mythology is a living archive of human experience, offering ethical guidance, psychological insight, and cultural continuity across millennia. By exploring these stories, we expand our appreciation for the complexity of ancient Greek thought and its enduring relevance to the modern world. Greek mythology and morality. Greek mythology is far more than a collection of fantastical stories about gods, monsters, and heroes. It is, in essence, a codification of moral and ethical reasoning. Ancient myths functioned as guides for personal conduct, social cohesion, and civic responsibility, offering lessons on virtue, vice, justice, and human behavior. They were a medium through which the Greeks could explore the consequences of choice, the nature of good and evil, and the relationship between humans and the divine. A central moral theme in Greek mythology is hubris, or excessive pride. Hubris is often portrayed as the most dangerous human flaw, leading mortals to challenge the gods, ignore societal norms, or overstep natural limits. The story of Niobe, who boasted of her superiority to the goddess Leto, illustrates the destructive consequences of hubris. Similarly, Arachne, whose arrogance in her weaving offended Athena, is punished by transformation into a spider. These narratives demonstrate that hubris not only invites divine retribution, but also threatens social and moral order. They reinforce the principle that moderation, humility, and respect are central virtues in human conduct. Justice and retribution are equally prevalent in Greek myths. The gods themselves embody principles of justice, even as they act with human-like emotions. Zeus enforces moral and cosmic order, punishing those who transgress ethical boundaries. Athena, as goddess of wisdom, provides guidance to heroes, ensuring that intelligence and moral discernment are rewarded. Myths such as the story of Prometheus, who defied Zeus to provide fire to humanity, explore the tension between rebellion, ethical responsibility, and consequence. Prometheus's suffering is a moral lesson on defiance, foresight, and the costs of ethical action, illustrating that virtue often requires courage and endurance. Greek myths also celebrate virtue and ethical excellence through the actions of heroes. The labors of Heracles demonstrate perseverance, courage, and the pursuit of atonement. Odysseus' journey home in the Odyssey emphasizes intelligence, loyalty, and moral resilience, while Perseus' confrontation with Medusa illustrates bravery, ingenuity, and ethical decisiveness. Heroes serve as models of ethical engagement, showing that actions, rather than status or divine favor alone, define moral character. The Greeks used these stories to convey that ethical conduct requires effort, discernment, and courage in the face of complex challenges. Loyalty, hospitality, and piety are also key moral dimensions in Greek mythology. The concept of xenia, or sacred hospitality, is exemplified in the tales of Baucis and Philemon, who are rewarded for their generosity and respect for strangers, ultimately revealed to be gods in disguise. These narratives emphasize that ethical behavior is not abstract but socially embedded, encouraging respect, empathy, and communal responsibility. Similarly, piety toward the gods reinforces the notion that ethical life includes recognition of forces beyond human control and moral humility before the divine. Moral complexity and ambiguity are essential features of Greek myths. Gods are not morally perfect. They exhibit jealousy, vengeance, and favoritism. Mortals likewise act with mixed motives. For example, the story of Medea involves both revenge and the pursuit of justice, challenging simplistic notions of right and wrong. Such narratives encourage audiences to consider ethical nuance, highlighting the complexities of human behavior and the consequences of moral choices. By presenting morally ambiguous situations, Greek myths cultivate reflection, discernment, and critical reasoning. Philosophers, particularly Plato and Aristotle, interpreted myths as allegorical tools for ethical reflection. Plato argued that myths conveyed lessons about virtue, the soul, and the consequences of human action. The myth of air, presented in the Republic, describes the afterlife and reincarnation, emphasizing that ethical choices carry lasting consequences. Aristotle, meanwhile, used myths to illustrate moral principles in his discussions of tragedy and catharsis, showing that observing narrative consequences allows audiences to internalize moral lessons and understand the implications of ethical and unethical behavior. Hubris, nemesis, and ethical consequence are recurring motifs that function as social and moral commentary. Nemesis, the goddess of retribution, ensures that individuals who act with arrogance, cruelty, or deceit are held accountable. Tales such as King Midas' Golden Touch explore the dangers of greed and ethical short-sightedness, while the tragic story of Oedipus demonstrates the interplay of fate, moral action, and responsibility. These narratives articulate a Greek understanding of cosmic and social justice, showing that ethical and moral integrity is intertwined with both human and divine order. Greek mythology also addresses ethical dilemmas related to loyalty, justice, and interpersonal conduct. The story of Antigone, who defies the king's edict to honor her brother, explores the tension between civil law and familial duty. Similarly, myths involving deception, such as Odysseus' cunning in the Trojan War, challenge audiences to consider pragmatic ethics versus moral ideals, demonstrating that ethical reasoning often involves negotiation, strategy, and the reconciliation of conflicting values. Gender and moral roles are explored in myths as well. Female figures such as Athena, Artemis, and Penelope embody wisdom, strategic thought, and loyalty, providing moral exemplars within a framework shaped by societal norms. Stories of Medusa, Circe, and Clytemnestra examine the consequences of injustice, vengeance, and the disruption of ethical and social balance. Through these narratives, Greek mythology offers a complex moral universe in which both male and female actions carry consequences and reflect broader ethical concerns. Lesser-known myths also contribute to moral instruction. For example, the story of Erysichthon, who desecrated a sacred grove and suffered endless hunger as punishment, illustrates environmental ethics and the consequences of disrespecting the sacred natural order. Similarly, myths about Niobe, Phaeton, and Midas explore hubris, ambition, and the moral ramifications of desire and negligence. These narratives reinforce ethical norms, highlighting both individual responsibility and societal expectations. Greek myths further connect morality to human experience and natural order. The actions of gods and mortals alike demonstrate that ethical behavior is not abstract, but intimately tied to consequences, both tangible and symbolic. Ethical failings often disrupt natural, social, and divine balance, while virtuous behavior promotes harmony, prosperity, and respect within communities. By embedding morality in narrative and cosmic order, the Greeks created a didactic framework in which ethical reflection was inseparable from cultural identity natural understanding, and philosophical inquiry. The modern relevance of Greek myths in moral discourse is striking. Contemporary literature, film, and video games continue to adapt these narratives to explore ethical questions. The tension between justice and mercy, the consequences of ambition, the responsibilities of leadership, and the struggle between personal desire and societal duty. Myths provide a shared ethical vocabulary, allowing modern audiences to examine universal questions of virtue, consequence, and human behavior through narrative, imagery, and allegory. The Greek mythology functions as a moral and ethical compass, offering lessons about humility, courage, justice, loyalty, and the consequences of human action. The gods, heroes, and mortals act as exemplars and warnings, illustrating the complex interplay of human behavior, divine influence, and cosmic order. These stories endure because they do not offer simplistic morality, but engage audiences in reflection, analysis, and ethical reasoning, providing insight into the challenges and responsibilities of human life. By studying Greek mythology, we gain not only historical knowledge, but also a framework for ethical reflection, a mirror of human behavior, and a repository of timeless moral wisdom. Myths teach that actions have consequences, that virtue requires courage and discernment, and that ethical awareness is essential to both individual and societal well-being. They remain relevant across millennia because the core questions of human morality about justice, conduct, desire, and consequence remain unchanged. Mythical creatures and monsters. One of the most vivid and enduring aspects of Greek mythology is its extraordinary array of mythical creatures and monsters. From the terrifying gaze of Medusa to the labyrinthine Minotaur, these beings are more than fantastical elements. They are symbolic embodiments of human fears, natural forces, moral challenges, and societal anxieties. They serve multiple narrative and ethical purposes, reflecting the Greeks' understanding of the world, human psychology, and cultural values. The Hydra, a multi-headed serpent slain by Heracles as one of his 12 labors, exemplifies the struggle against recurring, seemingly insurmountable challenges. Each time a head was severed, two more grew in its place. Symbolically, the Hydra represents the persistent nature of human obstacles, the complexity of moral and psychological challenges, and the necessity of intelligence and strategy in overcoming adversity. Heracles' eventual triumph, aided by his nephew Iolaus, illustrates the value of cooperation, ingenuity, and persistence, key virtues in both personal development and societal expectation. The Minotaur, trapped within the labyrinth of Crete, symbolizes both human ingenuity and the dangers of chaos left unchecked. Born of unnatural union and residing in a maze designed by Daedalus, the Minotaur represents the intersection of human ambition, divine punishment, and moral disorder. The labyrinth itself is symbolic. It is not merely a physical structure, but a metaphor for complex ethical, social, and psychological challenges. Theseus' triumph over the Minotaur demonstrates bravery, cleverness, and ethical decisiveness, showing that humans can confront and resolve even the most confounding threats through courage and reasoned action. Medusa is another striking example of the moral and psychological symbolism of monsters. A gorgon with snakes for hair, whose gaze turns onlookers to stone, Medusa is a complex figure embodying themes of punishment, victimization, and transformation. Originally a mortal woman, she was transformed by Athena as a consequence of desecration and ultimately slain by Perseus. Medusa's narrative explores fear, vengeance, and the destructive potential of envy and injustice, serving as a cautionary tale about the consequences of moral transgression and the interplay of human and divine judgment. She also reflects societal anxieties regarding female power and agency, illustrating the Greeks' nuanced approach to human behavior, ethics, and psychological complexity. The Cerberus, the three-headed dog guarding the underworld, represents the boundary between life and death. Its terrifying presence underscores the inevitability of mortality and the sacred order governing life. Heroes such as Heracles, who successfully captured Cerberus as one of his labors, confront these existential realities directly. The creature embodies fear, restraint, and moral courage, challenging humans to confront ultimate limits while adhering to divine and ethical frameworks. Cerberus also reinforces the concept that the natural and supernatural worlds are interlinked, with ethical and spiritual implications for human action. Greek mythology also includes hybrid creatures, such as centaurs, sphinxes, chimeras, and sirens, which combine human and animal features. These beings symbolize the complexity of human nature, the tension between instinct and reason, and the moral challenges of desire, violence, and self-control. Centaurs, often portrayed as wild and unruly, exemplify the dangers of unrestrained passion and physical strength, contrasting with heroes and gods who exercise intellect and ethical judgment. The Sphinx, with her riddle in the story of Oedipus, represents intellectual challenge and the moral necessity of wisdom and discernment, reinforcing the idea that monsters can embody both tangible and metaphorical obstacles. The Chimera, a fire-breathing hybrid of lion, goat, and serpent, illustrates the perils of confronting multifaceted threats, combining natural, ethical, and cosmic danger into a single adversary. Bellerophon's slaying of the Chimera demonstrates strategic thinking, courage, and divine assistance, highlighting the Greek belief that humans must combine personal skill with respect for cosmic and divine order to overcome extraordinary challenges. Such creatures illustrate that monsters in Greek mythology are more than entertainment. They are pedagogical tools, teaching moral reasoning, strategy, and the consequences of hubris or recklessness. Mythical creatures frequently serve as metaphors for internal human struggles. The Hydra, Medusa, and Cerberus can be interpreted as embodiments of fear, anger, envy, or psychological obstacles. Heroes' interactions with these monsters symbolize the ethical and emotional trials that define human experience, showing that mastery over external threats is inseparable from mastery over oneself. These narratives suggest that confronting monsters is both a practical and moral exercise, emphasizing virtues such as courage, intelligence, resilience, and ethical judgment. The moral dimensions of monsters are often interwoven with divine justice. Many monsters are born of transgression or are themselves instruments of divine will. Typhon, the monstrous storm giant, challenges Zeus and threatens cosmic order, representing chaos and rebellion against moral and natural law. Its defeat by Zeus symbolizes the restoration of order, demonstrating that ethical and societal stability requires vigilance, courage, and the enforcement of justice. Similarly, Scylla and Charybdis, who inhabit the narrow strait in Odysseus' journey, illustrate the ethical necessity of prudence and risk assessment, highlighting the importance of moral and strategic intelligence in navigating life's dangers. Greek myths also explore the consequences of human action through interaction with monsters. Phaeton's south-failed attempt to drive the sun chariot can be viewed as a monstrous narrative, where human ambition generates chaos, with nature itself reacting destructively. Likewise, encounters with monsters often involve ethical decision-making, testing loyalty, courage, and discernment. For instance, Perseus must navigate divine guidance, magical tools, and personal ingenuity to defeat Medusa ethically, emphasizing that moral awareness is essential in overcoming extraordinary threats. Monsters also serve as cultural and social symbols. The Minotaur's captivity in the labyrinth reflects political and social anxieties, including the consequences of tyranny, moral corruption, and ethical disorder. Harpies, sirens, and other hybrid creatures often punish wrongdoing, testing human restraint, prudence, and moral integrity. These narratives reinforce societal norms and ethical conduct, demonstrating that mythology functions as both psychological reflection and social pedagogy. Many monsters symbolize the unpredictable and potentially destructive aspects of nature. Earthquakes, floods, storms, and disease are often personified as monstrous forces, such as Typhon or the serpent python. Heroes' confrontations with these creatures illustrate the human struggle to understand, navigate, and respect natural forces, embedding ecological awareness and moral reflection within narrative form. By doing so, Greek mythology links ethics, natural philosophy, and psychology, teaching that virtue, prudence, and respect for order are necessary for survival and moral development. Finally, monsters are a test of human potential, morality, and ingenuity. They embody fears, desires, and ethical challenges, providing a framework through which ancient Greeks explored the limits of human ability, courage, and wisdom. Heroes' success often depends on a combination of personal skill, divine assistance, ethical judgment, and strategic thinking, illustrating the Greeks' holistic understanding of morality, psychology, and cosmology. These narratives continue to inspire contemporary storytelling, from literature and cinema to video games, underscoring the timeless resonance of monstrous archetypes as moral, psychological, and cultural symbols. The mythical creatures and monsters in Greek mythology are far more than fantastical obstacles. They are symbolic, ethical, psychological, and cultural touchstones, reflecting human fears, virtues, and societal values. They challenge mortals to confront both external threats and internal struggles, teaching lessons about courage, intelligence, moral judgment, and the consequences of hubris. By studying these monsters, we gain insight into the human condition, the Greeks' philosophical and moral framework, and the enduring power of narrative to shape thought, behavior, and imagination. Heroes' journeys and archetypes. Central to Greek mythology is the concept of the hero's journey, a narrative arc that reflects both human psychology and societal ideals. Greek heroes, though mortal or semi-divine, undergo experiences that test courage, intelligence, morality, and resilience. These narratives follow recognizable structures, often beginning with a call to adventure, followed by trials, divine intervention, confrontation with monsters or obstacles, ethical challenges, and eventual return. The departure or call to adventure is a defining moment. For Odysseus, it was the Trojan War. For Heracles, the necessity of atonement following the tragic killing of his family. For Perseus, the quest to save Andromeda and confront Medusa. This stage represents the human encounter with destiny, the call to fulfill potential, and the initial separation from comfort or the familiar. It resonates psychologically, illustrating the tension between safety and growth, familiarity and challenge, and the moral imperative to confront the unknown. During the trials and ordeals phase, heroes face monsters, divine challenges, and human adversaries. These trials are not merely physical, they are deeply moral and ethical. Heracles' 12 labors, for instance, test endurance, courage, ingenuity, and moral fortitude. Each labor slaying the Nemean lion, capturing the Erymanthian boar, and cleaning the Augean stables presents unique ethical and strategic dilemmas. Success requires more than strength. It requires reflection, foresight, and adherence to divine or moral law. The hero's ability to navigate these challenges serves as a model for human behavior, emphasizing the virtues the Greeks prized: perseverance, intelligence, courage, and ethical discernment. Divine intervention is a recurring element in the hero's journey. Gods such as Athena, Hermes, and Apollo often provide guidance, tools, or direct assistance. This intervention highlights the Greeks' belief in the interconnectedness of mortal and divine realms. Heroes succeed not solely through personal prowess, but through collaboration with the cosmos, symbolizing the moral and practical lesson that human action is most effective when aligned with wisdom, ethics, and natural order. For example, Perseus receives gifts from Athena and Hermes to confront Medusa, a reflective shield, winged sandals, and a magical sword. These tools symbolize the integration of divine wisdom and human agency. The archetypes embedded in these narratives provide psychological and cultural resonance. Heroes fall into recurring categories: the clever strategist, Odysseus; the reluctant champion, Perseus; the fated warrior, Achilles; and the atoning hero, Heracles. These archetypes allow audiences to explore different dimensions of human virtue, moral responsibility, and societal roles. Odysseus's intellect contrasts with Achilles' martial prowess, demonstrating that heroism encompasses diverse qualities: intelligence, strategy, endurance, courage, and ethical reasoning. These archetypes form the basis for countless later literary and cultural works, establishing enduring templates for storytelling worldwide. The hero's journey often includes a confrontation with monsters or symbolic adversaries, which serve as external manifestations of internal, moral, or societal challenges. These encounters test not only physical skill but ethical judgment, courage, and restraint. The slaying of the Minotaur by Theseus, the defeat of Medusa by Perseus, or the trials of Heracles illustrate that heroism involves navigating complex moral and practical challenges, making choices that define character and social responsibility. These narratives function as ethical laboratories, allowing audiences to examine human behavior in dramatic, symbolic, and morally instructive contexts. A return or reintegration phase often concludes the hero's journey, wherein the protagonist comes back transformed, having gained knowledge, wisdom, or ethical insight. Odysseus' eventual return to Ithaca, for instance, involves careful planning, moral discernment, and strategic action to reclaim his household and restore justice. This stage symbolizes the human potential for growth, ethical maturation, and societal contribution. It conveys that heroic action is inseparable from moral responsibility, wisdom, and the ability to restore order. The psychological dimension of the hero's journey is profound. Joseph Campbell later codified the concept of the monomyth, but Greek mythology provides some of the earliest and most compelling examples of the archetypal journey. Heroes embody the struggle between instinct and reason, fear and courage, selfishness and ethical duty. They navigate obstacles that are both external, monsters, enemies, gods, and internal, hubris, doubt, anger. This duality renders the narratives psychologically rich, allowing audiences to project personal fears, ambitions, and ethical dilemmas onto the hero's journey. Greek heroes also illustrate the interplay between fate and free will. While many are bound by prophecy, such as Oedipus, they still exercise moral and strategic agency. This tension reflects Greek philosophical and cultural concerns. How much control do individuals have over their destiny, and what is the ethical responsibility within predetermined circumstances? The hero's journey teaches that while humans may face forces beyond control, they are morally accountable for their choices, a principle deeply embedded in Greek conceptions of ethics and justice. The hero's journey also emphasizes interpersonal and societal ethics. Many narratives stress loyalty, familial duty, and civic responsibility. Odysseus' careful protection of his household, Heracles' redemption through labor, and Perseus' quest to protect others illustrate that heroism involves ethical concern for the wider community. Heroes act not solely for personal glory, but to uphold social, moral, and divine order, making their journeys culturally instructive and ethically significant. Furthermore, Greek hero narratives explore gender dimensions of heroism. Female figures such as Atalanta, Penelope, and media navigate challenges within a male-dominated cultural context, offering alternative archetypes of courage, intelligence, and moral agency. Atlanta's prowess in hunting and racing demonstrates that heroism encompasses skill, strategy, and ethical conduct, regardless of gender. Penelope's loyalty and strategic intellect in the Odyssey exemplify moral and intellectual heroism in domestic and social spheres. These narratives expand the conceptual framework of heroism to include diverse forms of virtue, strategy, and ethical action. Greek hero myths also function as ethical and psychological mirrors for human development. They explore the consequences of hubris, ambition, ethical failure, and moral courage. The narrative structure call to adventure, trials, divine aid, confrontation, and return models stages of personal growth, resilience, and ethical maturation. Heroes' struggles with internal and external challenges provide audiences with moral exemplars, cautionary lessons, and strategies for navigating life's complexities. The hero archetypes have influenced global literature, storytelling, and popular culture for millennia. From Homeric epics to modern novels, films, and video games, the journey of the hero facing trials, confronting ethical dilemmas, and returning transformed remains a fundamental narrative template. Characters like Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, and Kratos in God of War draw directly from Greek hero narratives, demonstrating the timeless resonance and psychological power of these archetypes. The hero's journey in Greek mythology is a complex and multifaceted narrative structure, intertwining adventure, ethics, psychology, and cultural instruction. Heroes embody courage, intelligence, ethical responsibility, and resilience, confronting external monsters and internal challenges. Their journeys illustrate the tension between fate and free will, the interplay of human and divine influence, and the moral responsibilities of individuals to themselves and society. By examining these narratives, we gain insight into human psychology, ethical reasoning, cultural ideals, and the enduring power of storytelling. Greek heroes are more than legendary figures. They are archetypal models of ethical, psychological, and cultural exploration, offering lessons that remain relevant across millennia and cultures. Women in Greek mythology are far from mere background figures. They are powerful, complex, and central to narrative development, embodying virtues, vices, and moral and societal challenges. These female figures reveal the Greeks' understanding of human nature, societal roles, ethics, and the consequences of human and divine action. Studying them provides insight into gender perspectives, power dynamics, and cultural values in ancient Greece, while also offering timeless lessons on agency, responsibility, and resilience. The Olympian goddess Athena represents one of the most profound examples of female power and virtue in Greek mythology. Born fully armored from the head of Zeus, Athena embodies wisdom, strategy, justice, and skill in warfare. She is a patron of cities, crafts, and intellectual pursuits, guiding heroes such as Odysseus, Perseus, and Heracles in their quests. Athena demonstrates that female power in Greek myth is not limited to domesticity or beauty, but encompasses intellect, moral guidance, and leadership, reinforcing the value of rationality, strategic thinking, and ethical conduct. Her narratives explore how women can exercise agency, influence events, and shape ethical outcomes without compromising moral integrity. Artemis, goddess of the hunt, wilderness, and chastity, represents independence and connection to the natural world. Unlike Athena, whose influence is primarily civic and intellectual, Artemis embodies freedom, self-determination, and protection of life and nature. She punishes those who harm the innocent or violate sacred laws, illustrating the moral authority and ethical agency of female figures. Myths involving Artemis, such as the punishment of Actaeon for violating her sanctity, emphasize the consequences of disrespecting autonomy, natural order, and divine law. Artemis stories convey the Greeks' recognition of female agency as a powerful moral force, challenging assumptions about passive femininity, and highlighting the intersection of ethics, independence, and societal norms. Mortals, too, play pivotal roles in Greek mythology. Penelope, wife of Odysseus, exemplifies loyalty, patience, intelligence, and resilience. During her husband's two-decade absence, she skillfully navigates threats from suitors while preserving household order. Penelope's strategies, such as weaving and unweaving her shroud, illustrate ingenuity, moral fortitude, and ethical prudence. Her narrative demonstrates that heroism is not limited to physical feats or divine favor. It also encompasses intellectual and moral endurance in complex social and ethical circumstances. Through Penelope, Greek mythology celebrates the moral and strategic capacities of women within domestic, civic, and social spheres. Female figures also illustrate the dangers of hubris, vengeance, and injustice, emphasizing ethical and moral lessons. Medusa, transformed into a gorgon as punishment for desecration, embodies themes of victimization, divine justice, and the destructive consequences of anger and envy. Her story is a cautionary tale about power, injustice, and societal norms, highlighting the precarious position of women in both mortal and divine narratives. Clytemnestra, who murders her husband Agamemnon, demonstrates the ethical complexities of vengeance, familial loyalty, and justice, illustrating that female agency can be both morally instructive and narratively central. These figures reveal that women in Greek myth are active moral agents, influencing outcomes and challenging heroes, gods, and societal expectations alike. The myths of Helen of Troy and the Trojan women explore the intersection of beauty, desire, and political consequence. Helen's beauty sparks the Trojan War, illustrating how women, often viewed through the lens of appearance and social perception, can shape historical and ethical outcomes in mythic narrative. The Trojan women, enduring war's devastation, highlight suffering, resilience, and the ethical consequences of human ambition, offering perspectives on morality, empathy, and the social impact of conflict. These narratives underscore that female experiences in Greek mythology often illuminate broader ethical, societal, and emotional truths. Greek mythology also addresses themes of female creativity, influence, and moral authority. Figures such as Ariadne, who aids Theseus with a thread to navigate the labyrinth, demonstrate practical intelligence, courage, and strategic ethical decision-making. Ariadne's agency is central to the narrative's resolution, showing that female contributions are not incidental but essential to heroic success. Similarly, mythic women such as Pandora, whose curiosity opens a jar releasing suffering into the world, embody complex moral and philosophical lessons, illustrating the consequences of action, ethical decision-making, and the balance of human curiosity and responsibility. The myths of witches and enchantresses, including Circe and Medea, explore the ethical and psychological dimensions of female power. Circe's transformation of men into animals reflects moral tests, divine power, and ethical challenge, requiring heroes to demonstrate intelligence, restraint, and ethical discernment. Medea's revenge against Jason presents a morally complex narrative, challenging audiences to reflect on justice, emotion, loyalty, and the consequences of betrayal, illustrating that Greek mythology engages with the full spectrum of human emotion and ethical nuance, especially when expressed through female action. Greek mythology also addresses female roles in reproduction, lineage, and dynastic ethics. Goddesses such as Hera, Demeter, and Leto exert profound influence on fertility, agriculture, and societal continuity. Hera, while sometimes portrayed as jealous and vengeful, embodies marriage, family cohesion, and ethical guardianship of domestic and social order. Demeter, through the story of Persephone, establishes a moral and cosmic framework connecting human action, divine order, and the cycles of nature, highlighting the ethical and practical significance of female agency in sustaining life and societal stability. The narratives of female figures also illustrate moral cautionary lessons and societal critique. Niobe, punished for pride, exemplifies hubris and ethical misjudgment. Her narrative warns against overstepping divine and social boundaries. Similarly, Phaedra, Diana, and other mortal women navigate love, jealousy, and power, highlighting the consequences of ethical choices and emotional excess. These stories demonstrate that female characters are central to exploring morality, societal norms, and psychological complexity, providing models of virtue, caution, and human consequence. The symbolic and allegorical significance of women in Greek mythology is vast. They embody wisdom, courage, virtue, ethical challenge, and societal roles, reflecting the Greeks' understanding of gender, morality, and human nature. Female deities and mortals alike operate within a moral universe, influencing heroes, guiding ethical decisions, and testing societal and divine law. Through their narratives, women illustrate the complexities of power, agency, morality, and the human condition, offering insights into social structure, philosophical reflection, and cultural ideals. Finally, the enduring legacy of female figures in Greek mythology extends into modern literature, art, and media. Characters such as Athena and Artemis inspire narratives of intelligence, independence, and moral fortitude. Penelope's loyalty and strategic patience resonate in contemporary stories of resilience and ethical endurance. Even Medusa's complex identity has been reinterpreted in modern literature and feminist discourse, emphasizing justice, autonomy, and societal critique. These reinterpretations highlight the timeless power of Greek mythological women to reflect, challenge, and inspire moral, social, and psychological reflection across cultures and eras. The women in Greek mythology are central, complex, and morally significant figures. They embody virtue, wisdom, courage, and ethical insight, while also illustrating the dangers of hubris, injustice, and emotional excess. From goddesses to mortals, their narratives illuminate gender dynamics, ethical principles, societal roles, and human psychology. By examining these figures, we gain a profound understanding of Greek cultural values, moral frameworks, and narrative sophistication, as well as timeless lessons about agency, morality, and the consequences of human and divine action. Women in Greek mythology are not passive observers, but active participants and architects of mythic, ethical, and cultural reality, offering insight and inspiration that continues to resonate across millennia. Greek mythology and philosophy. Greek mythology and philosophy are deeply intertwined, forming a continuum of human thought that explores ethics, the nature of existence, human behavior, and the cosmos. While myths convey stories of gods, heroes, and monsters, philosophers analyze these narratives allegorically, seeking underlying truths about human nature, morality, and the universe. In many ways, mythology provided the foundation for philosophical inquiry, offering a symbolic framework through which rational thought could emerge. The philosopher Plato viewed myths as more than entertainment. In works such as The Republic and Timaeus, he treated stories of the gods and cosmos as vehicles for ethical and metaphysical exploration. Myths illustrated the consequences of human action, the nature of justice, and the structure of society. Plato often encouraged the reinterpretation of myths allegorically, suggesting that the literal narratives of divine behavior conceal profound insights into human psychology and moral responsibility. For example, the myth of Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, becomes, in Plato's philosophical lens, a lesson on hubris, the limits of ambition, and the need for reasoned judgment. Aristotle, in his Poetics, analyzed myth from a structural and ethical perspective. He examined tragedy and epic poetry, highlighting the moral and psychological function of narrative. Heroes and monsters, gods and mortals, were not just characters. They were representations of virtue, vice, and human potential. Aristotle argued that myths and stories engage audiences emotionally, fostering catharsis, a purification of fear and pity that strengthens moral reflection and ethical understanding. For instance, the trials of Heracles or Odysseus evoke empathy, while reinforcing the importance of courage, perseverance, intelligence, and ethical decision-making. Socrates, as portrayed in Plato's dialogues, often used myth allegorically to teach ethical reasoning. He argued that myths could illustrate ethical dilemmas and the nature of the soul, prompting individuals to reflect critically on virtue, justice, and human conduct. For example, the myth of Tantalus, eternally punished for offending the gods, is more than a cautionary tale. It symbolizes ethical transgression, consequences of hubris, and the moral architecture of human society. Socratic interpretation emphasizes that myths are tools for rational reflection, bridging storytelling with philosophical inquiry. Greek mythology also served as a practical framework for exploring cosmology and natural philosophy. The stories of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades can be interpreted as representations of natural forces, thunderstorms, oceans, and the underworld, providing symbolic explanations for phenomena that ancient science could not yet quantify. Philosophers such as Empedocles and Pythagoras saw myths as allegories for elemental and cosmic principles: fire, water, air, earth, and the cyclical nature of life. This symbolic reading demonstrates that myth and philosophy were not mutually exclusive. Mythology provided metaphors and narratives that philosophers could analyze, rationalize, and expand into systematic theories of the universe. Ethics is central to the philosophical interpretation of myths. Many narratives serve as moral laboratories, illustrating the consequences of human action and the importance of virtue. The story of King Oedipus, for example, explores fate, free will, and ethical responsibility, challenging audiences to consider the limits of human agency and the moral obligations inherent in knowledge and action. Similarly, myths like that of Niobe, punished for hubris, or Prometheus, who defied Zeus to benefit humanity, highlight the tension between obedience, innovation, ambition, and ethical foresight. Philosophers used these narratives to teach ethical reflection, emphasizing that morality is intertwined with understanding, foresight, and the consequences of action. The symbolic depth of mythology also allowed philosophers to explore human psychology and the soul. Plato's theory of the tripartite soul, rational, spirited, and appetitive, can be interpreted through mythic narratives. Rationality aligns with Athena's wisdom, courage with Heracles' labors, and desire with the moral challenges faced by mortals and gods alike. This allegorical reading emphasizes that myths are not merely stories but tools for introspection, teaching audiences to understand and regulate emotions, desires, and ethical impulses. Greek mythology also intersects with philosophy in political and social theory. Myths often reflect societal hierarchies, divine justice, and communal ethics. Plato's ideal city in the Republic draws upon mythic imagery, incorporating lessons about virtue, justice, and governance. Myths of divine kingship, heroism, and social order are analyzed as reflections of ethical governance, societal cohesion, and moral responsibility, showing how narrative shapes collective understanding of law, justice, and civic duty. Philosophers also engaged in comparative analysis of myth, noting similarities between Greek stories and narratives from other civilizations, such as Egyptian and Mesopotamian traditions. These analyses reveal that mythology is a universal medium for exploring ethical, cosmological, and psychological questions, providing a framework to understand both the human condition and the organization of society. Greek philosophers recognized that myths encode human experience, guiding generations and cultures. Allegorical interpretation extends to the divine human interface in myth. Gods and mortals are not merely literal figures. They symbolize human qualities, ethical dilemmas, and cosmic principles. Zeus' authority, Hera's vigilance, and Athena's wisdom illustrate leadership, justice, and intellect. The narrative structures birth, struggle, triumph, punishment, and mortality allow reflection on the nature of life, death, and cosmic order. Philosophers like Plotinus and the Stoics interpreted myths as symbolic lessons in understanding fate, self-mastery, and the relationship between humans and the cosmos. By analyzing mythic narratives, they explored universal truths, including the inevitability of change, the necessity of ethical action, and the pursuit of wisdom. The philosophical relevance of monsters and moral challenges in mythology is profound. Creatures like Cerberus, Medusa, and the Hydra symbolize obstacles that test virtue, courage, and wisdom. Heroes' encounters with these beings illustrate ethical deliberation, strategic thinking. Both aim to teach, to cultivate understanding, and to illuminate the human experience. While myths narrate events and characters, philosophy interrogates, rationalizes, and extracts ethical, psychological, and cosmological principles. Together, they offer a comprehensive view of human life, guiding morality, virtue, civic duty, and the pursuit of wisdom. By studying mythology through a philosophical lens, we recognize that stories of gods, heroes, and monsters are not mere entertainment, but enduring tools for reflection, education, and the cultivation of human understanding. Greek mythology and philosophy are deeply interconnected. Myths provide narrative substance, illustrating ethical dilemmas, psychological complexity, and cosmological questions. Philosophy interprets, analyzes, and extracts universal principles from these narratives, demonstrating that storytelling and rational thought are complementary in understanding the human condition. From ethical reflection to metaphysical inquiry, the study of Greek myths through a philosophical lens offers timeless insight into morality, human behavior, the cosmos. By placing Orion in the sky, the Greeks transformed human narratives into celestial patterns, allowing myths to serve as both moral exemplars and tools for orientation and storytelling. The story of Andromeda, chained to a rock as a sacrifice to a sea monster, and her rescue by Perseus, is another example of mythic astronomy. Many myths served a practical and agricultural function, linking celestial observations to seasonal and agricultural cycles. The myth of Demeter and Persephone, explaining the changing seasons, had direct astronomical significance. This constellation grouping is not arbitrary. It creates a visual narrative of heroism, moral duty, and divine human interaction, linking ethical storytelling with astronomical observation. Such mappings made the sky a living library of cultural, ethical, and philosophical knowledge. Greek astronomers and mythographers often used myths to explain phenomena they could not yet measure scientifically, such as eclipses, planetary movements, and celestial events. For example, the chariot of Helios, the sun god, driving across the sky, symbolizes the sun's daily journey and its seasonal variations. Myths like Helios, Voyage, and Phaeton South catastrophic attempt to drive the sun chariot encode both ethical warnings about hubris and practical observations of solar patterns, blending narrative, science, and morality. Constellations also served navigational purposes. Mariners relied on stars for guidance, and myths associated with these celestial markers made them easier to remember. Orion's belt, for instance, became a crucial tool for navigation, linking human stories to practical survival and societal activity. By mapping heroes, monsters, and gods onto the sky, Greeks created a mnemonic system, merging cultural education with astronomy, ethics, and exploration. Greek mythology also explores the psychological significance of celestial stories. Stars and constellations symbolize human fears, desires, and ethical struggles projected onto the vast, incomprehensible cosmos. By locating human narratives in the sky, the Greeks confronted mortality, hubris, love, and vengeance within a cosmic framework, allowing both reflection and consolation. Celestial myths illustrate that human concerns are mirrored in the universe, providing reassurance that moral and ethical order is part of the cosmic structure. The placement of myths in the sky also had religious and ritual significance. Observing the stars, rituals could be timed to align with divine calendars. Certain festivals, sacrifices, and prayers coincided with the appearance of specific constellations, blending astronomy, devotion, and mythic storytelling. The alignment of celestial events with mythic narratives reinforced the perception of a universe governed by both divine and ethical order, where human action, moral conduct, and ritual observance were inextricably connected. Greek mythology and astronomy also emphasizes the interconnectedness of stories. Constellations were not isolated. They were part of a cosmic narrative network. Perseus, Andromeda, Cassiopeia, Cepheus, and Cetus form a spatial story in the heavens, illustrating interconnected human and divine relationships. This network mirrors societal and moral structures, reinforcing the ethical and psychological dimensions of myth while situating them within the observable cosmos. Philosophical reflection on these celestial myths also reveals the Greeks' early attempts to reconcile narrative with rational observation. Philosophers such as Plato and Pythagoras considered the heavens a reflection of cosmic harmony, where myth could encode principles of order, proportion, and moral law. Constellations became both symbolic and functional, representing the marriage of imagination, observation, and ethical reflection, demonstrating that Greek thought did not separate story, science, and philosophy, but wove them together in a coherent cultural framework. The symbolic function of celestial myths extends into modern science and culture. Today, constellations retain the names and narratives of Greek mythology, continuing to educate, inspire, and provide ethical reflection. By preserving these myths in the sky, Greek culture ensured that stories of heroism, morality, human fallibility, and divine interaction remain accessible to all generations. Astronomical myths thus demonstrate that mythology is both timeless and universal, a bridge between human experience, ethical reflection, and cosmic observation. Greek mythology and astronomy are inseparable, forming a cosmic library of ethics, psychology, culture, and practical knowledge. Constellations, celestial narratives, and mythic mappings connect human experience to the cosmos, providing moral guidance, practical observation, psychological insight, and cultural cohesion. By studying these celestial myths, we gain insight into how the Greeks understood the universe, human nature, and the divine, and how narrative, observation, and ethical reflection can coexist in a single, integrated system of knowledge. The stars themselves became teachers, embedding moral, practical, and psychological lessons into the very fabric of the night sky, ensuring that the wisdom of Greek mythology continues to illuminate both mind and cosmos for all who gaze upward. Myths across cultures. In ancient Mesopotamia, one of the world's earliest civilizations, myths were deeply concerned with creation, divine authority, and human purpose. The Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, tells of primordial chaos, the rise of gods, and the ordering of the cosmos, bearing striking parallels to the Greek cosmogony. In Greek mythology, chaos gives rise to Gaia and Uranus, followed by Titans and Olympian gods. Both traditions reflect humanity's attempt to explain existence through narrative, to make sense of the cosmos, and to explore the moral and social order imposed by divine authority. The parallels suggest either shared archetypal reasoning or cultural exchange facilitated through trade and migration. Flood narratives are another striking point of intersection. Mesopotamian myths recount the story of Utnapishtim surviving a great flood, echoing themes of divine punishment, moral conduct, and human resilience. Similarly, Greek myths reference floods sent by gods to cleanse humanity, such as the story of Deucalion and Pyrrha. These myths convey shared ethical principles, the consequences of hubris, the need for piety, and the moral responsibility of humans. Across civilizations, floods symbolize both destruction and renewal, illustrating a universal human concern with the fragility of civilization and the moral imperatives required to sustain it. Ancient Egyptian mythology offers another fascinating lens. The myths of Ra, Osiris, Isis, Instead, explore creation, death, resurrection, and divine kingship. Osiris' death and resurrection parallels Greek myths of Persephone and Dionysus, where death and rebirth become metaphors for seasonal cycles, agricultural productivity, and the ethical responsibilities of rulers and humans. The Egyptian emphasis on cosmic order, ma'at, balance, justice, and moral harmony resonates with Greek notions of ethical conduct and divine justice, suggesting a shared cultural concern with moral and cosmic balance. Both civilizations use myth to guide human behavior and encode societal values, linking morality, cosmology, and ritual practice. The ancient Romans, heavily influenced by Greek mythology, adapted and transformed Greek narratives to reflect their own societal values. Greek gods were syncretized into Roman forms. Zeus became Jupiter, Hera became Juno, and Athena became Minerva. While the narratives retained core ethical and cosmological lessons, the Romans emphasized civic duty, social order, and imperial ideology. By comparing Greek and Roman myths, we observe how cultural adaptation shapes narrative while preserving universal themes: heroism, divine human interaction, moral responsibility, and the consequences of human action. Across these civilizations, universal archetypes emerge: the trickster, the hero, the mother, the flood survivor, and the divine king. These recurring figures reflect shared human concerns: ethics, survival, mortality, power, and the struggle to understand nature and the divine. Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell later described such figures as archetypes, patterns embedded in the human psyche that recur across cultures and time. Comparative mythology allows us to trace these archetypes in Greek myths: Zeus as the supreme god, reflecting cosmic authority; Heracles as the universal hero; Pandora as the emblem of human curiosity and consequence. By placing Greek myths within a global context, we see their universality and enduring relevance. Cultural exchange also played a role in shaping Greek mythology. Through trade, conquest, and colonization, the Greeks encountered Egyptian, Near Eastern, and Anatolian civilizations, absorbing and adapting foreign motifs. The Greeks may have borrowed astronomical myths, divine genealogies, and flood narratives, integrating them into a uniquely Hellenic framework that reflected their social structures, political systems, and philosophical outlook. This synthesis underscores the dynamic and evolving nature of mythology, highlighting how stories are both products of culture and instruments of cultural dialogue. Greek myths also exhibit cross-cultural ethical and philosophical reflection. Stories of hubris, divine retribution, heroism, and moral ambiguity are mirrored in Mesopotamian and Egyptian narratives. The moral lessons: humility before the gods, courage in adversity, ethical leadership, and responsibility for human action transcend national boundaries, suggesting that mythology serves as a universal human language for ethics, morality, and cosmology. The Greeks, however, uniquely combined these lessons with philosophical inquiry, questioning the nature of justice, the role of fate, and the ethical responsibilities of mortals, creating a bridge between narrative, reason, and cultural reflection. In addition, ritual and religious practice reflect cross-cultural influences. Festivals, sacrifices, and celestial observations were often informed by myth, linking divine narrative to civic and agricultural life. In Mesopotamia, the Akitu festival celebrated creation and renewal. In Egypt, rituals reinforced Ma'at. In Greece, festivals honored gods and heroes through theater, athletic contests, and sacrifice. These practices demonstrate that myth is inseparable from culture, politics, and societal cohesion, functioning as both entertainment and moral instruction across civilizations. Comparative mythology also highlights the adaptability of myth. Greek myths could absorb foreign influences while retaining ethical, cosmological, and narrative coherence. This adaptability ensured the persistence of Greek mythology across centuries, influencing Roman, medieval, and modern storytelling. Myths become living narratives, capable of teaching, inspiring, and evolving, while maintaining core lessons about human nature, ethics, and the universe. Finally, examining Greek mythology alongside other civilizations reveals the universality of human imagination and inquiry. Myths are humanity's earliest attempts to answer enduring questions. Why are we here? How should we live? What is the role of divine power? By studying these narratives across cultures, we see patterns of thought, shared ethical concerns, and the timeless pursuit of meaning. Greek mythology, in this global context, is not simply a collection of stories. It is part of humanity's collective attempt to understand life, death, morality, and the cosmos. The Greek mythology and its parallels in other ancient cultures reveal a shared human endeavor to interpret the world, explore morality, and construct ethical, social, and cosmic frameworks. By comparing Greek myths with Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and Roman narratives, we understand how storytelling transcends culture, geography, and time. Myths across civilizations share themes of creation, heroism, morality, divine human interaction, and cosmic order, demonstrating that mythology is both culturally specific and universally resonant. Greek myths, in dialogue with other traditions, illuminate the universality of human curiosity, ethical reflection, and narrative imagination, underscoring the enduring power of stories to educate, inspire, and connect humanity across millennia. Greek mythology in modern pop culture. Greek mythology has survived not only as a historical or literary curiosity, but as a living, evolving cultural force. Its stories continue to resonate, inspire, and influence contemporary culture across multiple media, reaching audiences worldwide. From literature to cinema, video games, comics, and even social media, these ancient narratives are being reinterpreted and repurposed, demonstrating that the core themes of Greek mythology, human emotion, moral lessons, heroism, and the tension between mortals and the divine, remain timelessly relevant. One of the most prominent modern adaptations is the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. Here, Greek mythology is reimagined in a contemporary setting where the gods, heroes, and monsters interact with the modern world. The series maintains fidelity to the original myths while exploring universal themes: friendship, bravery, identity, and moral choice. Characters like Percy, Annabeth, and Grover echo the archetypal hero journey, allowing young readers to engage with mythology in a relatable, ethical, and educational context. Through Riordan's work, ancient stories of Olympus are made accessible to a global, multi-generational audience, ensuring that myths continue to inspire curiosity, imagination, and ethical reflection. In the realm of video games, Greek mythology has become a major source of inspiration. The God of War franchise, for instance, centers on Kratos, a mortal navigating the world of gods, monsters, and moral dilemmas. The game's narrative blends mythic fidelity with interactive storytelling, allowing players to experience the consequences of heroism, vengeance, and moral choice firsthand. Mythical figures such as Zeus, Athena, and Hades are reinterpreted with depth, flaws, and motivation, highlighting the humanization of the divine that was central to ancient Greek storytelling. Similarly, the game Hades explores the underworld, gods, and mortality through compelling narrative and dynamic gameplay, bringing philosophical and ethical dimensions of mythology to life. Greek myths also thrive in film and television, from classical epics to modern reinterpretations. Movies like Clash of the Titans, Troy, and Immortals present mythic narratives visually, exploring heroism, divine intervention, and moral struggle. These adaptations translate complex myths into accessible narratives, emphasizing visual storytelling while retaining ethical and psychological themes. Modern cinematic techniques CGI, immersive sound, and cinematic scoring amplify the mythic experience, allowing audiences to connect emotionally with ancient stories in a highly engaging format. Comics and graphic novels have also drawn heavily from Greek mythology. Characters like Wonder Woman directly embody mythic archetypes' divine origin, heroic purpose, and moral code, while narrative arcs mirror ancient struggles between gods, heroes, and mortals. Comics allow for visual, symbolic, and narrative flexibility, making myths accessible and adaptable for contemporary audiences, especially youth. Through serialized storytelling, myths become ongoing cultural conversations, reinforcing their relevance in modern ethical, psychological, and societal contexts. Even social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube contribute to the renaissance of Greek mythology. Creators share bite-sized mythological stories, artistic interpretations, educational explanations, and humorous reimaginings. These formats make ancient stories viral, relatable, and interactive, often blending humor, ethics, and creativity. Audiences can engage with myths directly, responding, remixing, or discussing ethical dilemmas and human behaviors represented in the narratives. Social media ensures that myths are living narratives, constantly evolving and interacting with contemporary culture. Literature remains a vital medium for mythic reinterpretation. Contemporary authors and poets frequently draw upon Greek myths to explore modern social, psychological, and ethical issues. For example, the themes of hubris, ambition, revenge, and morality in Greek myths provide frameworks for exploring identity, power, and societal expectations in modern narratives. Writers use myth as a lens to examine contemporary dilemmas, revealing the universality of human experience across time. Greek mythology also permeates educational media and cultural discourse. Documentaries, podcasts, and lecture series interpret myths for global audiences, emphasizing historical, philosophical, and ethical significance. These educational efforts reinforce the timeless insights of mythology, making it a bridge between academic scholarship and popular culture. Students and enthusiasts engage not only with narrative entertainment, but with the ethical, philosophical, and psychological wisdom embedded in myths. The aesthetic dimension of Greek mythology continues to inspire modern art, design, and fashion. Artists reinterpret gods, heroes, and mythic creatures, creating paintings, digital art, sculptures, and fashion collections that merge classical imagery with contemporary cultural expression. This visual engagement allows myths to transcend temporal and cultural boundaries, transforming narrative into experiential and symbolic expression that resonates with modern audiences. Greek mythology's presence in pop culture also fosters cross-cultural dialogue. By adapting these narratives globally, modern storytellers create spaces for ethical reflection, cultural exchange, and shared fascination with human experience. Heroes' journeys, divine struggles, and moral lessons are universally comprehensible, allowing audiences from diverse backgrounds to engage with themes of courage, ambition, justice, and human vulnerability. Through film, literature, gaming, and social media, Greek mythology remains relevant, dynamic, and transformative. At its core, the adaptation of Greek mythology in modern culture preserves the human and ethical essence of the original narratives. Despite changes in medium and context, the stories retain lessons about human behavior, morality, ambition, hubris, love, and resilience. By engaging with these narratives, contemporary audiences are invited to reflect on ethical decision-making, personal responsibility, and the interplay between human agency and fate, echoing the reflective function that myths served in ancient Greece. The Greek mythology in modern pop culture is not merely entertainment. It is a continuation of an ancient dialogue between humanity and its stories. Whether through literature, games, film, comics, or social media, myths are continually reinterpreted, teaching, inspiring, and challenging audiences worldwide. These adaptations maintain the core of human experience, linking past and present, tradition and innovation. Greek myths, far from being relics of antiquity, are living narratives, dynamic and universal, offering ethical guidance, emotional resonance, and cultural enrichment for generations to come. As we reach the end of our exploration, it is important to reflect on what Greek mythology represents not merely as a collection of entertaining stories, but as a comprehensive system of thought, culture, and understanding. From the primordial chaos that birthed the universe to the trials of heroes and the wisdom of gods, Greek myths provide insight into human nature, morality, societal structure, philosophy, and the cosmos itself. They are a bridge connecting the imagination of the ancient Greeks with the intellectual, ethical, and cultural pursuits of all who study them today. Greek mythology begins with the cosmos itself, with stories of chaos, Gaia, and Uranus, followed by the Titans and Olympian gods. These narratives are more than fanciful tales, they are cosmological reflections, early attempts to understand natural phenomena, human existence, and the forces that govern life. The myths explain thunderstorms, earthquakes, the changing seasons, and celestial movements through stories that are rich with symbolism, moral meaning, and philosophical significance. By studying these myths, we see the ancients' attempts to integrate ethics, natural observation, and social order into a coherent worldview. The stories of heroes and mortals deepen our understanding of human behavior, highlighting virtues such as courage, perseverance, intelligence, and humility, as well as vices such as hubris, greed, and envy. Characters like Heracles, Perseus, Odysseus, and Jason are not merely figures of legend. They are archetypes that reflect the values, fears, and aspirations of Greek society. Each hero's journey provides a blueprint for ethical reflection, demonstrating the consequences of human action and the interplay between personal choice and divine influence. These narratives underscore the enduring question: what does it mean to live well and act justly in a complex and often unpredictable world? Greek mythology also humanizes the divine. The gods are anthropomorphized, exhibiting emotions, flaws, and virtues akin to those of humans. Zeus' power and infidelity, Hera's jealousy, Athena's wisdom, and Poseidon's wrath illustrate the complexity of moral and social conduct, serving as mirrors in which humans can examine their own behaviors. The gods' interactions with mortals and with each other provide lessons on ethical dilemmas, interpersonal relationships, and the responsibilities of leadership, reflecting societal concerns about justice, loyalty, and morality. Throughout history, philosophers have engaged deeply with mythology, interpreting these narratives allegorically and philosophically. Plato, Aristotle, and Socratic thinkers used myths to explore human psychology, ethics, and cosmology, revealing that myths were not merely entertainment, but vehicles for rational reflection and ethical inquiry. For example, the story of Oedipus raises profound questions about fate, free will, and moral responsibility, while Prometheus's defiance of Zeus prompts reflection on justice, sacrifice, and the role of knowledge. These philosophical readings show that mythology and reason are not opposed. Rather, they complement each other, providing ethical, psychological, and cosmological insights. The natural world itself is inseparable from Greek mythology. Stories explaining storms, earthquakes, the ocean, and the cycles of agriculture illustrate the Greeks' understanding of nature as both powerful and morally instructive. Myths like that of Demeter and Persephone link the changing seasons to human life, agriculture, and ritual practice, creating a symbolic and practical relationship between humans and the environment. Even today, these myths remind us of our interdependence with nature, ethical stewardship, and the cyclical rhythms of life and death. Greek mythology also reflects the diversity and complexity of human emotion. Love, ambition, pride, grief, jealousy, loyalty, and courage are explored in rich narrative detail. Myths about Niobe, Phaeton, Echo, and Narcissus illuminate human vulnerabilities, social consequences, and the psychology of desire and self-reflection. By studying these narratives, we gain a deeper understanding of why humans behave as they do, how societies regulate behavior, and how stories can function as ethical and psychological guidance across generations. Cultural exchange has also shaped Greek mythology, placing it within a broader context of ancient storytelling. Greek myths share themes with Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and Roman narratives: creation, divine authority, floods, heroism, and moral instruction. By situating Greek mythology in this comparative framework, we appreciate its universality and adaptability, its ability to absorb and reinterpret ideas, and its role in fostering cross-cultural understanding and dialogue. Myths are thus both culturally specific and globally resonant, revealing the shared human endeavor to explore morality, mortality, and the cosmos. Modern adaptations of literature, film, games, comics, and social media demonstrate the enduring power of these stories. From Percy Jackson and God of War to TikTok adaptations and cinematic epics, Greek myths continue to resonate, teaching lessons, inspiring creativity, and offering ethical and psychological reflection. Heroes' journeys, divine struggles, and moral dilemmas are universal. They speak to contemporary audiences, reinforcing the timeless relevance of ancient narratives. Greek mythology is not static. It is a living, evolving tradition, continually renewed through human imagination. Celestial myths remind us that humans have always sought to connect the terrestrial and the divine, the mortal and the cosmic. Constellations like Orion, Andromeda, Perseus, and Cassiopeia map narratives onto the night sky, embedding ethics, psychology, heroism, and divine human interaction into the cosmos itself. Celestial myths integrate narrative, observation, and morality, showing that mythology is both educational and spiritual, a guide for understanding our place in the universe. Greek mythology's enduring relevance lies in its integration of story, philosophy, ethics, psychology, and observation. It is simultaneously history, literature, moral instruction, and philosophical inquiry. Studying these myths allows us to reflect on human behavior, societal structure, moral responsibility, and our relationship with the universe, revealing insights that are as meaningful today as they were in antiquity. Each myth, hero, and god is a lens through which we can examine the eternal questions of life. What is virtue? What is justice? What is our purpose? And how do we confront mortality and uncertainty? In closing, when we speak the names Zeus, Athena, or Heracles, we are not merely recalling ancient stories. We are engaging with the collective wisdom of a civilization that sought to explain the cosmos, understand human nature, and articulate ethical principles. Greek mythology is a living legacy, offering guidance, inspiration, and reflection across millennia. It reminds us that stories are not merely entertainment. They are tools for learning, moral reflection, and cultural continuity. As we gaze upon the ruins of ancient temples, the night sky, filled with constellations, or the pages of modern adaptations, we recognize that Greek mythology continues to teach, challenge, and inspire. Its narratives are mirrors reflecting human fears, hopes, and virtues. They are guides for ethical behavior, explorations of human psychology, and frameworks for understanding the universe. The journey of Greek mythology is never-ending, for each story contains multitudes, ethical lessons, philosophical inquiry, cultural history, psychological insight, and artistic inspiration. By engaging with these myths, we participate in a conversation that spans millennia, connecting with the ancient Greeks and with ourselves. Mythology, in essence, is both a map and a mirror, a map guiding human understanding of the world, and a mirror reflecting the timeless patterns of human thought, behavior, and aspiration. Ultimately, Greek mythology is more than stories of gods and heroes. It is a comprehensive framework for human reflection, a bridge across time, a lens for ethical and philosophical inquiry, and a source of enduring artistic and cultural inspiration. Its lessons remain vital, reminding us that while centuries pass, the questions we ask, the struggles we face, and the values we seek endure. Greek mythology continues to teach, inspire, and captivate, linking the past with the present and offering insight into the eternal human journey toward understanding, virtue, and meaning.